Hello and welcome to the MerseySportLive podcast. I'm Andy Lott and I'm joined today by Beck Pascal. We're going to be talking about all things Premier League today as the international break is currently in motion. We've had a very interesting start to the Premier League, haven't we, Beck, so far?
Yeah, it's been goals galore, to be honest. It has been very interesting. I've liked Leeds, to be honest. Leeds have sort of been my favourite to watch. Loads of goals going in, loads of goals scored. Just I don't know. They've come and attacked the Premier League, which I like. I didn't expect anything else from Bielsa, but they've come and they belong in the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? They should have been there 16 years ago, but they've come and they've lived up to it so far. Anyway, it's still early doors.
Yeah. So you mentioned about goals galore there. We've had some pretty shock results so far in the Premier League.
Yeah.
We'll leave Liverpool for a sec and talk about the other one. Manchester City losing 5-2 at home to Leicester. In terms of that game, did that just like set the tone for the season almost, even though it was only like a week ago?
To be honest, I think the tone was set our first game against Leeds, 4-3. But that might have been a sign of more things to come. I think the Man City versus Leicester, you got your Man United versus Tottenham, all them sort of games, even Everton versus West Brom, games like that. There are a lot of teams scoring goals and they're letting the goals in as well. It's up and down.
Yeah, obviously we had the Liverpool losing 7-2 to Aston Villa just last Sunday, which me and you both want to forget about quickly. But in terms of like Liverpool's start to the season, obviously we are both Liverpool fans, so we've been more or less, been following every single game. And of all the 4 games that we had so far this season, Aston Villa was probably the one that we were nailed on to win, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I remember when the fixtures came out, I saw Leeds, Arsenal and Chelsea, and I thought, win all them 3 games and I will be buzzing. We won all them 3 games. I was buzzing. And then we played against Aston Villa and sort of mental. It was crazy. I don't think I've seen definitely a performance under Klopp that bad. It was just, I think it was a one-off. I hope it was a one-off anyway, but 7 goals against Aston Villa. I can't put it into words, as you can tell. Even now, it was a week ago.
Yeah.
And I still can't. What went wrong? It was every single player on the pitch just had an off day, which didn't help.
Yeah, I mean, obviously one of those was Joe Gomez, and he didn't really put himself up in lights in that game, did he?
Nah, he did not. If I'm completely honest, I was in the pub watching it because it was one of my friend's birthday, and I walked out. I think it was 4-1. It might have even been 5-2. I didn't want to watch anymore. I just couldn't be. But I weren't really watching it anyway because I was watching it, but when it started to get silly, I just stopped. I wanted to enjoy my night. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to be watching that kind of football.
Yeah, I mean, despite that result, Liverpool played Leeds, obviously a very topsy-turvy game, 4-3. They went to Chelsea. Yes, Chelsea had a man sent off, but Liverpool really controlled the game. But it was that Arsenal game, wasn't it? That was so good for Liverpool, even though we did concede early. How good were Liverpool in that game? And do you think that Liverpool should use that as a precedent for the rest of the season?
Definitely. Even the Chelsea game, as you say, they had a man sent off, but we controlled the game for large parts. For all parts, mostly. We controlled that game. It was like the sign of champions. At the Arsenal game, I was nervous for, just because of the new season. Arsenal, they're in better form than they have been for a long time, and under Arteta, they're looking fresh. They're looking as good as an Arsenal team has for a good few years. So I was nervous going into the game. Conceding early didn't help, but since then we just controlled the game brilliantly.
Yeah, it was a very good performance of Liverpool. It's probably one of the best we've had for a little while. On the other side, to Liverpool's closest, challengers last season, because they came second, was Manchester City. And in terms of their defence, Do you think that with the Ruben Dias signing, do you believe that it's the right move for City, and do you think that will help them with their defence?
Sorry, it cut out then. What did you say?
Oh yeah, so I was saying about Ruben Dias and Manchester City. Do you think that he's the problem? He's the solution to the problems at the back?
Well, I think they hope he is, because they're throwing money at defenders left, right, and centre. They have been for years now, haven't they? They've spent a lot of money on defenders. I haven't seen a lot of him. There's a lot of talk about him, which might not help. A lot of pressure coming in for quite a young guy. I'll have to judge him sort of when I see him play, but I don't know. I just feel like it's going to take someone big, and it might take a very long time for them to fill Kompany's shoes. It might be similar with Van Dijk when he eventually goes. He was Mr. Man City, wasn't he? He was the captain. He set the tone every game, every training session. So for him to fill his boots will be a big ask, but who knows? Maybe in a few seasons, because he's obviously a good player, isn't he?
Yeah, he is definitely, and I know he wouldn't be getting paid, that amount of money a week in order to play for Manchester City.
Yeah. Well, you never know with Man City; they'll pay anyone anything, won't they? Man City.
Just on Manchester City, obviously 18 points was the gap last season, and a lot of pundits have maybe predicted before the season that City would close that gap and even surpass it this season and actually beat Liverpool to the title. With the start that both teams had had, do you believe that, or do you think Liverpool are going to retain the title this season?
I'm very optimistic that we'll retain the title. I think we will. It's my judgment. It's not clouded to say, but going off the back of a 7-2 against Aston Villa, you've got the derby with Everton in the form of their lives. It's a very important time. You need to snap out of it quick, and we need to get results back on the board and just carry on going. But I don't think they'll surpass us. I hope not. But I think the one difference with this season, it won't be a 97 points or a 98 or 100 points. I think you'll see a normal season again with Liverpool and Man City. I think they've, as you've seen last season, they've definitely got mistakes in them, draws, losses at home. They've got a lot of cracks to pave over. And with us, there's just a touch of uncertainty. I know it's early in the season. The Leeds game, we got away with one there. There was a couple of penalties in that game, which helped us out. Obviously, they were penalties, but it helped us out. The Chelsea game, I would have liked to have seen if Christensen didn't get sent off, how that would have panned out. Because although we controlled the game, we wasn't destroying them, sort of thing. It was they always had a counter attack in them with Werner, didn't they? So we'll just have to wait and see how the season pans out. But I think we'll retain the title. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, you mentioned Everton there. Before we go on to Leicester, we'll talk about Everton. We obviously do have them in the derby, and the fans of Everton are really getting excited, aren't they? I mean, top of the league, City, Liverpool, Leicester, all dropping points at the weekend.
Yeah, my cousin's an Evertonian, and he has not shut up. Honestly, this is the first time he's messaged me in about 30 years. He's been giving it all. He's been giving it all the chat, and I'll be honest. I said from the start of the season, I might have even said it to you. If we're going to lose to Everton, it will be this season. Unfortunately, with no fans, there's that. It's like a training game almost, isn't it? There's a lot less tension on the game, which I think suits us, and they sort of wilt under a lot, especially at Anfield. So I am nervous for the derby, especially with Rodriguez, CalvertLewin scoring goals. They're looking dangerous, and they've fixed their problems that they had last season in midfield. And Ancelotti is a great manager. So
yeah, with Everton, I've been really impressed with how they've won in very different ways this season. You obviously had the 1-0 away at Tottenham. It was a very controlled performance, against a big side, something that teams really lack below the top six in terms of going to a top six side, and they dealt with that well. they've also smashed teams like West Brom. Even though they did go behind and got pegged back, they still won that there. A tricky game away at Palace, they won that. They won that 2-1. And finally, outscoring Brighton. They seem to be the most consistent out of everyone. But do you feel like this is just like a little honeymoon period in terms of the start of the season? And do you feel like they will drop off? Do you even think they'll even come in the top 6?
That's the thing. You can never call it too early in the season, can you? Especially with Everton. Sometimes they'll start well. Sometimes they'll be in the bottom 3 after 10 games or something like that. You can never call it. I think they will drop off. It's only a matter of time until they drop off. It takes 1 or 2 bad performances, the team morale going, because they're sky high right now. There's no doubt in that. Rodriguez has come in. He's in form. He's the star man. CalvertLewin's scoring all types of goals, little flicks, some of them are lucky, some of them are good goals, but all it takes is that little bit of luck to run out for them for everything to change,
Yeah, you just mentioned Dominic CalvertLewin. He's obviously had a fantastic start to the season in all competitions and for England as well, scoring on his full debut the other night against Wales. Do you feel like Everton in the past have had problems probably with the striker? I know they had Romelu Lukaku, but since then they've never really replaced.
Yeah.
And do you feel like he's the man for Everton this season?
I'd say so. Yeah, he's the best they've had since Lukaku. I think it's very early to call, because I wouldn't say he's a striker that will go and he's one of them strikers where you give him the ball and he'll win you games. He'll score loads of 20 goals a season, stuff like that. Right now he's in the right place at the right time. He's getting the goals. He's doing well, and his confidence is up, which is the main thing for a striker. So I think he's got a lot more to learn, and his trade is still uncertain. But I think he's Everton's main man at the moment with Rodriguez, and he will be for the rest of the season. It just depends whether he can do that season after season.
Yeah. In terms of another team, before we move on to the rest of the top 6, we're just going to talk about a team that finished on 5th last season. That's Leicester. After 3 games, beating Man City, West Brom and Burnley, scoring a lot of goals. You think, they might actually sustain a top 4 finish this year, and then they go lose at home 3-0 to West Ham a week later.
Yeah.
What do you feel about Leicester, and do you feel like it's going to be another one of those seasons where they're just not there, especially with Europa League football?
Yeah, it's so strange with Leicester, because they're a great side with great players. You've got Vardy, Maddison, Tielemans. You've got quality players in there that are capable of pulling off great results, like the Man City game. They've given us some hard games throughout the past couple of seasons. James Milner, last minute penalty to win it. Games like that where they play really well, but then they do lose 3-0 against West Ham, and they do slip up, and they seem to lack consistency. They've got, as I've said, they've got bags of talent, but it's sort of consistency. And I don't know whether that's Brendan Rodgers, because last season they were nailed on for top 4, weren't they? They were, I think it was January, we was talking about them challenging us for the title, and then all of a sudden they haven't lived up to that, and they've fallen out of the top 4. And as you say, this season with Europa League, it could even be tougher for them, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could.
Having something else to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the problem last season. During that December-January period, they dropped a lot of points because of games against, like in the Carabao Cup, they had, semi-finals and FA Cup games, etc. Yeah. Just moving back onto the usual top 6, as you like, and a side that's really spent a lot during the transfer window, and that's Chelsea. Do you, in terms of their spending, do you think they've spent in the right areas, and do you think they'll eventually become a success this season?
I wouldn't say this season. I was really impressed with what Frank Lampard had done last season with the transfer ban, the youngsters, the academy players, bringing them through. I was really impressed. Top 4, FA Cup. I was really impressed. But for me, I feel like they've spent too much. They've brought in too many players. It seems they could go and prove me wrong, but sometimes when you bring in that many players from different countries and different clubs, they just won't gel. Or it might take them a while to gel. Obviously, they've brought in Chilwell, who's an English lad who knows the Premier League. They've brought in the two Germans who they might link up, but with Ziyech, other players like that, it's very uncertain. They're not proved in the Premier League yet, are they? And neither is Frank Lampard to some extent. He's had one good season, so it's 50-50. I think it comes back to that consistency again. You see against West Brom, they went 3-0 down in the first half, but in some games they look like a comfortable outfit. So it's hard to say with Chelsea.
Yeah, and just on Chelsea spending, they've actually spent on a goalkeeper that because Kepa Arrizabalaga was becoming more of a liability for them, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's a good point actually. They needed to solve that problem in between the sticks. I don't hope they have, but for Frank Lampard's sake and for their Roman Abramovich's sake, I hope they've found a half decent keeper, because Kepa, he's the most expensive goalkeeper in the world, but he's far from the most talented goalkeeper in the world. So it just didn't add up there. I think they sort of panicked with that one. They saw us buy Alisson a week before and thought, right, we now need to go and spend more, and we need to go get the next brilliant keeper, and he just hasn't lived up to it. I think they've still got some issues in defence. You can't be bringing in Thiago Silva towards the end of his career, and it's sort of a settler, but you need to think of the project. You need to think long term, I think, to bring someone in.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously tried with that long thing with Kepa because he is quite young, but in the end, it's just he hasn't developed quite enough quickly enough for his sake at the moment. Just coming on to another problem in the league, and that's Manchester United. Obviously, just there, you just smiled as I've said that. And to be honest, I don't really have a specific question. All I just want to say is, like, it's a mess over there, isn't it?
Yeah, you haven't got a specific question, because I don't think you can cover it in a specific question. Where do you start? Do you start with the manager, the defence, the captain, Harry Maguire, the goalkeeper, De Gea or Henderson? They need a striker. They've brought in Cavani, who, for me, there's no doubt, and he's been world class. He's scored goals. He's done it on the highest stage. But is that what Manchester United are looking for? Are they? It clearly isn't, because they've done it last minute. They've missed out on their targets. So it's rash for me. I just think from top to bottom, there's sort of no direction the club's going in. It just seems too messy.
Yeah,
it was very much like Liverpool under the Hodgson era. Do you know what I mean? There was no structure to the club. We sell Suarez. We're bringing in Ricky Lambert. We're bringing in this Balotelli. We're bringing in players that there's no sort of philosophy. There's no agenda. It's just, he's a big name. He's a good player. Let's bring him in and hopefully they'll gel. Hopefully something will happen. When you've got to be smart with your recruitment, and that stems from the top, really, which I think is very messy over at Man United. Yeah,
you've summed it up really, really well there. Talking about problems not just on the pitch but off the pitch as well, in terms of the people at the top of the Man United hierarchy. And it's been voiced by pundits, and especially like Gary Neville, who's really gone at Manchester United in terms of their spending, their actual problems. But do you think that even with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, yes, he come third last season, somehow, I don't know how that happened, Leicester fell away so much, and so did Chelsea, to be fair. Do you feel like Ole is good enough to bring United forward and actually challenge for the league, or do you think he's like a stumbling block at this moment to a better manager once the system gets better, in a sense?
Yeah, well, from my point of view, I don't think he's good enough for Man United, but they're a perfect fit at this current time, because Man United aren't what they were. They've got great players, but I don't necessarily think you can blame it on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because then the players aren't doing themselves justice anyway. Paul Pogba and Maguire, Rashford, he's doing more action off the pitch than he is on the pitch with his MBE and stuff like that. But I think he definitely is a stabiliser after Mourinho, because anyone could have come in after Mourinho and done a good job because of how toxic it was at Man United at that time. But he's far from what they want, I think. I just think he's a puppet at the moment. He's a yes man.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave Manchester United for the moment and then move on to a probably more positive note in terms of like results, and that's Arsenal. Especially under Mikel Arteta, you know, he's come in midway through into a shambles, didn't he? Let's be honest, you know.
Yeah.
You know, after Emery, Ljungberg had, I think it was like 3 weeks before they actually got Arteta into the club. But now, once after the FA Cup win in the summer, and then the signings they've made and the results they've started with, do you feel like Arsenal are like? Do you reckon they will challenge for the top 4 this season after finishing 8th last year?
As I said earlier in the podcast, Arsenal for a long time have been a joke, so it's hard to take them seriously. But they are looking in the best shape. It's not necessarily the best Arsenal team for a long way. Do you know what I mean? But they are in good shape. Mikel Arteta is a good manager. He's worked with Pep. He's obviously got very good tactical knowledge of the game. You've got Aubameyang, who seems to carry the weight of the team on his shoulders. They've made that Gabriel signing, who might shore them up a little bit at the back. But when you're playing alongside David Luiz, I just think any game is a recipe for disaster. I'd be on the edge of my seat watching him play. Do you know what I mean? Every single week. So, to be honest, I think they will get top 4, but they're a long way from the finished article. And I don't know if they will ever get there, because Man City, Liverpool, we seem worlds apart from the rest of the bunch at the moment.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there with that one. About being, you know, so far away. Yeah. Sorry, I think my connection just gone a little bit there. But in terms of the next going across to North London and Spurs, and they had a slow start to the summer in terms of transfers. You know, they didn't bring that many players in until probably after the first game against Everton, where they recognised they needed probably more depth, and they've got that in using like Gareth Bale, you know, that Reguilon at left back. Do you feel like Mourinho has finally now got his team and he can build upon it this season?
Without doubt, he's got no excuses now. He's got no excuse to not succeed. He's had transfer windows with them. He's brought in players that he wants himself. Because I've been watching the Spurs documentary, and it seems at times his hands were tied with the squad, with the players he had, injuries, things like that. But they've improved in terms of depth. He's brought in the players he wants. I don't think Gareth Bale will live up to what he was first time round at Tottenham. That's impossible to do. He hasn't played football for a long time. They've signed him injured, which is a very Spurs thing to do. But Mourinho, for me, the game has surpassed Mourinho. He still is a household name. He's a top manager, but he's not a Guardiola. He's not a Klopp. The game has surpassed him. It's a bit like Rafa Benitez. It's them sort of tactics, and Ancelotti to a certain extent, but he's still giving it a bit of fight, Ancelotti. But Benitez, Mourinho, them days are over. I think it's more fast, expansive football now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so as well. But I feel like I've always got a little soft spot for Mourinho, because I feel like he is still, in terms of like mind games and tactically, I still think he's one of like tactically, maybe not on his own side, but against other teams and opposition. I think he still knows enough of the game and understands it to be able to influence it in that way. Because, you know, to be fair to them, they have started scoring goals now. You know, 5 away at Southampton. You know, maybe they are. I don't think any team you could call defensive. Not even Burnley. You know, they've been shipping goals as well this season.
Yeah.
Another thing on Spurs is their fixture pile-up. They've obviously had, you know, almost 4 games a week. I think the other week with Europa League and the Carabao Cup.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that might play a part in Spurs' season? And just a little bit about the Europa League. Do you think that Mourinho will attack the Europa League as the best way to get in the Champions League, or do you feel like he should go for it for the league?
Without a doubt, he'll attack the Europa League. You saw it at Manchester United. He wanted to win that. He's going to want to win it with Tottenham as well, because at the end of the day, you're measured on trophies. And Mourinho, he's got bags of trophies in his cabinet, hasn't he? And he's going to want another one. They're miles off the league, unless, I don't know, the whole Liverpool squad come down with coronavirus. But they're miles off the league. So if I was him, I would be looking at the Europa League for a way into the Champions League and for a trophy, because Tottenham need a trophy, don't they? They're desperate for a trophy. Yeah. So the smaller competitions like the Europa League, FA Cup, things like that, that's what they really need to be looking at.
Yeah. Just before we go on to the relegation battle for a few minutes, I know I haven't said this to you off the camera, but can you give me your top 6 this season?
Ooh.
Off the top of your head.
In order?
Yeah.
Oh God. I'm gonna go Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal. I'm going to just throw in Leicester, because they're going to be hungry for it. They're going to be hungry for it after. Actually,
Chelsea.
You've really put me on the spot here. Yeah, you've really put me on the spot here. All right, I'm going to go Arsenal, Chelsea, Leicester, Man United.
Oh, no Spurs.
I'm telling you now, that's wrong. But you put me on the.
It'll probably change.
On the spot.
It'll be changed by next Sunday when someone gets beat like 8-2 or something like that. Yeah. Just going on.
Spurs are well within a shout. Yeah. Spurs are well within a shout, but I don't know. I'm not a Spurs man.
Just going on the relegation now. Obviously, we're not too familiar with the relegation battle, because obviously we don't follow clubs in that sort of realm, in that area. But in terms of the start, do you feel like Fulham and West Brom are nailed on for relegation this season?
It seems like that, doesn't it? Fulham. Yeah. I would say Fulham more than West Brom at the moment, because they came up, they went down, they're back up. They look like they're going to go back down. It's a bit of a Norwich, a bit of sort of a yo-yo motion, isn't it? Up, down, up, down. Scott Parker. I'm never overly impressed with Scott Parker. I mean, they obviously came straight back up from the Championship, but I just don't think they're a Premier League side. West Brom, they've shown a little bit of fight against Everton. They went 3-0 up against a very strong Chelsea side, but couldn't see it out. I think Slaven Bilic has done a brilliant job over at West Ham in the past, so he's got the know-how of the Premier League. He's done it here before, so West Brom might be in with a shout of survival. It's early doors, isn't it? So it's hard to call.
Yeah. Just another thing on Sheffield United. Obviously, last season they did very well. And they won a lot of games last season, almost challenging for Europe, in fact. But they've had a tough start to the season. I've scored only 1 goal in the first 4 games. Do you feel like this is a case of second season syndrome for them?
Potentially, it very well could be, because they came up and they did brilliant, didn't they? They looked the part, and I don't think it will be second season syndrome. I wouldn't go as far to say as they might go down. I think they will struggle, because setting the bar that high last season, it's only gonna come and bite them in the butt, I should say, because I can't swear. But so they've set the bar so high. I wouldn't say they would get relegated, or I hope not, because I do like Chris Wilder and a lot of the Sheffield United players, but they won't match what they did last season without a doubt.
Yeah, that sounds quite right, to be fair. I mean, I feel like with Sheffield United, the goals have obviously dried up a little bit, and I looked at their conversion rate last season, and they almost scored with every shot they had. Every big chance they had last season. Yeah.
they're not the most attacking team, are they? They like to sit in, soak up the pressure, and break or set pieces and counter attack. So they're not the most exciting team to watch, but they just managed to do it. I watched them for large parts last season, and I thought, McBurney, you don't look like a Premier League. You don't look like a Premier League striker. A lot of their players don't seem like Premier League players, but as a team, they were no shadow of a doubt a Premier League team last season, and they give a lot of good teams a run for their money. But you can't forget as well this season, which might affect them. Dean Henderson going. That was a big one for them, wasn't it? He was their main man. Ramsdale was obviously a good replacement, but Henderson was brilliant for them.
Yeah, indeed. And hopefully, I mean, I like to see Sheffield United stay up anyway, because I feel like they're like a proper club, you know. But it look like a Fulham, West Brom, and you never know who's going to be that third spot. You never know in a season. No one would have predicted Watford to go down last season, and look what happened after that. That'll be it. We've covered pretty much everything on this MerseySportLive podcast, the first one of the new season. I'd like to thank Beck for joining me for this one. We might be back again next week. It depends if anyone else wants to come in and take part. We're not going to try and make this like a sole just us two every week. We want to try and open it up to other people, etc. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you later. Goodbye.